Hello everyone. So today we have three maker speaker and also Tenfi from Craft Council joining us for this business session. So I'm just going to briefly introduce all the three makers, and they could briefly introduce what they do and what kind of question could you guys could ask them. So first of all, we have Darren Appiagyei, who is an artist who specializes in the craft of wood turning. He's also residents in cockpit art, as well as winner of Hot House program. So if there's anything about signing up applications and stuff, we could ask him more. And also there's ceramist Reiko, Kaneko. And Chris is not here with us today, right?
I think he might join a bit later.
Yeah, he might join us a bit later. So Darren, would you like to introduce a bit of what you do first?
Hi guys, so my name is Darren Appiagyei. My work is simply about embracing the imperfections of the wood, so allowing the wood to speak for itself rather than trying to refine it or polish it basically. I just love wood turning. I find it very therapeutic, and I think that's where my passion started. Not thinking about the end product, but enjoying the process. So I can kind of give you advice on how to get into Hot House, how to get into cockpit arts, and also how to have the right mentality to start your business and being resilient throughout the process.
Cool. Would Rico want to carry on and introduce a bit of your practice to us?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm a ceramicist and designer. Based in London, and I design products for manufacture as well as for kind of bespoke pieces for commissioned projects. I graduated from Central St Martin's and founded a creative studio in London in 2007. And in 2012, I've moved to Stoke-on-Trent, the traditional home of industrial scale pottery manufacturing in Britain. Where I am now actually, but in 2017 I returned to London, so I've worked from kind of a garden studio in London there, but I continue to run the Stoke-on-Trent studio at a smaller scale. I will try and cast my mind back to when I've started, but I'm happy to talk about anything really, but maybe perhaps you might be interested in the kind of the B2B side of things, how to sell to the other businesses or manufacturing versus studio work and doing your own production. But yeah, over to you.
Cool, amazing. We do have a list of questions that we've been gathered before the session. We could go back to when we first graduate, basically. There's people asking, would you try to sell your graduate collection even if they're one-off?
Oh, Eve, can I just interrupt you? Do you want to do an introduction to yourself and
yes,
do an introduction as well? Sorry.
Hi everyone, my name's Eve Lem. Sorry for not introducing myself, but I'm a jewelry maker and a designer. So my practice focuses on transforming mass-produced product or objects into jewelry. And I also do freelance work for hardware design for some fashion brands. But I just graduated in 2018 from Central St Martin's. So I'm at like the beginning stage of like trying to develop my craft into career. Obviously trying very hard online, selling online, because that's like the platform that we get to use nowadays for free. So yeah, if there's anything about social media or if a fee is a problem, I could give some suggestions. Yeah, so enough about me. What do you guys think about selling your graduate collections for like one-off items?
Does
Darren want to?
I would say it depends. If you need it to develop your work and you need that as like the blueprint for the next batch of work, maybe not. But if you know how to develop it further, then by all means do so. Also, it will give you confidence. I remember when I was studying at Camberwell, in my grad show, I sold one of my pieces, and the confidence that it gives you is amazing. And also, it's a great way to start off your practice, actually. in your grad check to sell off one piece. It's a great opportunity, and you never know what it could lead to as well. But it all depends on the circumstance and the situation.
Yeah, I do agree, because I also sell some of my pieces during my graduation show, and that's one thing I would keep in mind for the future, is that it's the best to keep good contact with the people that you actually sell your work to, because later on you might be joining exhibitions or some competition that you would like the piece back for a period of time, and then you could contact them afterward. But yeah, I would also say definitely try to sell them, because it is a great confidence boost at the beginning. Maybe we can move on to the next question.
I've got one more point actually.
Yeah.
If you can't sell it, and if you're not willing to, you can still give your business card. So that's a way of you connecting with the person. And so you might not be able to sell it, but you still have contact with them. So once you've actually created more pieces, you can actually email them and kind of build a rapport there. So sorry.
Yeah, and I think, sorry.
Eve, I think Tamfi wanted to put an answer in, and she's not done an introduction yet.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just going to join in right now just to say that I work with the talent development team. So Rosie and I work really closely together, and some of you might have met me through Young Craft Citizens group, and like that's where I met you, Eve.
Yeah,
we could physically. And just to say that Reiko, who's one of our speakers today, is also running working with retailers talk on the 5th, I think, of August. Is that correct? So there's some crossover with what our learning and participation team do, which is what Rosie's part of, and Zoe. But there's also a really lovely bridge to, if you're really serious about setting up your business, there's some really key information that even established makers need access to, like how to be more commercially driven online, which Eve has also offered. Well, sort of offered her sort of knowledge on social media, which is a big thing. And it's so important right now, especially when we have lost a lot of pretty much all our physical shows. So do email us. I think you've got Rosie's contact, haven't you, everybody here? So if you're really interested, please research or Google search Meet the Maker for our Eventbrite talks. And that's it. I'll just do that little plug. And
Tanvi is also an amazing maker herself and jeweler, and is like ridiculously talented. So just wanted to embarrass her there. But also I've completely forgotten to introduce myself and Young Craft Citizens, which is just like me, and I do it literally every time, so I'm going to do that now. So Young Craft Citizens is our network for 16 to, it used to be 25, I disagreed with it and now it's 30, makers and creatives. It's usually based in London at our gallery, and we run regular meetings where we can work on different kind of content, workshops, various bits and bobs with the Crafts Council. So if we've got an event exhibition going on, we might work on some activity around that. We also feed as a group a lot into how the Crafts Council operates. So it's that kind of sort of youth voice element basically, and as well as that, we run regular paid placements. We've got a Twitter account which shares lots of different creative opportunities, and what's been great over the last couple of months is we've actually done so much more online content, and it's meant that we've been able to reach a lot more people, which has been great. So I, in the chat probably at the end of the session, will pop my email and any links to anything about that. So yeah, really sorry, Eve, I'll let you carry on asking questions.
No worries at all. And yeah, I'm also one of the Young Craft Council citizens, and they do actually run a lot of programs like before lockdown, like meeting artists in person, and also then you can get to ask whatever you want to ask, and it's a good kind of community that you get to share information and resources together. So definitely recommend to join.
Oh,
let's moving on to the next question. Is there any good events to attend for networking opportunities? I guess it's more around, I think it really depends on what kind of industry you're at, but if we're talking about craft, obviously YCC, and the speakers have any kind of event that they've been to and think that it would be good for young, emerging artists to join?
I'm with Cockpit Arts, and so every year we have a summer and winter open studios. So that's a great time to actually build a rapport with artists and makers, and actually have a discussion as well, and to understand their experiences, which I feel like is quite important as an artist, to understand how people develop their business, to understand their blueprint on being successful. So that's another opportunity, I guess.
I think also you have to recognize that, you know, the people that you've graduated with as well is your network also, and is, you know, you could create, in this climate, it's quite difficult to be kind of recommending networks, isn't it? Apart from the, you know, Craft Council, and I've come from UAL, so they do quite a lot of kind of alumni based things, but I think in this climate you're going to have to make your own connections and noises and actually invite people yourself in a way, like, and create your own network. And I just think you can't discount the people that you know that you've worked through kind of the education system with as well. That is, yeah,
that's definitely true. Like we're still kind of technically in lockdown, so it's very hard to like attend physical networking events per se, but I personally find it quite useful on social media. There's this website called The Dots, and they offer a lot of like freelancing opportunity, and also for freelancer to connect within the Red platform. Also, I've personally found Instagram a very good platform to link up with other artists, to do collaborations, because nowadays Instagram almost kind of become like your profile, like an artist profile for people to see, and you could direct message them on Instagram, so it's quite useful in that sense for people to connect, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. Instagram is quite easy to message someone.
Yeah, it is.
Like, brave at times, because you know they may not reply back, but you never know. You just messaging them could make a difference. I remember when I was in uni, I messaged Eleanor Lakeman, who's in my studio in Coppets, who's a neighbour of my studio in Coppets. And so I sent her an email asking to do an internship, and she didn't see the message. And then I got a studio in Cockpit Arts, and I was walking past her studio, and then she just stopped me and she said she just received my email. So you never know, down the line, even though they might not reply straight away, down the line, they still may remember you. So.
Yeah, so true. I was quite lucky in that sense, because obviously in lockdown you don't really like obviously on your phone quite a lot, and I'll just messaging people like online shops and other jewelry artists, and it's just kind of like a blank email thing that I send to everyone, just explaining who I am and what I do. And you never know, some of them actually get back to you and be like, I will actually want to try to stock your item first, and then it may lead to some other opportunity. So yeah, definitely have a thick skin on social media and try to approach as many people as you can.
I've had a similar thing actually. I remember I started just posting just random like items of clothing that I'd made on social media and just made an account for them, and I got incredibly lucky in that another clothing brand that had the same kind of ideals basically got in contact and said to me, oh, we've got a pop-up shop in Hackney Wick happening in a few weeks, like, do you want to make some stuff and have a rail in the shop? And I was like, yes, I would love that. It's quite rare that kind of thing happens, but it's, you know, it's definitely a way to get seen. Tavi, did you have anything to add about sort of Crafts Council networks or anything?
Yeah, well, I actually was thinking the Crafts Council, Cockpit Arts, and those sort of London-centric, it's a little bit easier sometimes to access it in the capital. But I came from the Midlands, so I set up my practice straight after graduating from Derby and I moved to Nottingham and then Leicester. So I've had a real sort of tour of the East Midlands, and I'd say access your local business support help. So whether that be general business help or even the really specific, like Design Factory used to be there, which is now Design Nation. And also I was, my background is in jewellery making, in contemporary jewellery. So I was already a member of the Association for Contemporary Jewellers before I graduated. But when I graduated at New Designers, I got an award by them. And part of the prize was to get the free membership, but I was already a student member. So there's these lovely little connections that you can make. And then just sort of, I'd say also email lists. I know there's the social media is quite a really good one. So if you do have a Facebook page, follow the page, the business page of your suppliers, or even online, because I can see there was a question about suppliers and clients. I'd say look up, sort of follow the news, sign up to newsletters, and then just have an email system in your folders and put them all in. So at one point, if you think, oh, you know, you can unsubscribe after a while, but you've got a record of what they do supply, because they might send you weekly emails. So it could be from photography equipment to, you know, your business card printing or whatever. So I'd say there's lots of practical ways as well of sort of having a little archive that you can go back to. Yeah. Can you hit? It's gone really silent now.
No, we can hear you.
I think email subscription is a very good resources, but definitely organize them well. Otherwise, your inbox is gonna become a mess. But yeah. I think everybody very interested in the question of how to start their business. And I think it's a very big question. It is very broad in terms of obviously starting a business. You need to have a business idea, and then you need to think, where does the money come from and how do you sustain the business? So from Joyce, she was asking, do you think we should have money first to start business? I think I personally would say no, but it really depends on your practice. Like, for example, the machinery you need and the space you need. Darren, when you first started
I would say no. I feel like it starts from an idea, and it's about developing that idea. So even if you don't have the machinery, it's about developing that idea, building that foundation ready for when you have the machinery that you need. And so there's always means, especially in London, to get machinery. Like there are other companies you can use to access machinery. So it's not the end of the world. It's about being resourceful with what you have and using your connections around you. So your connection could be your uni. You never know, you could be part of their alumni, and you could maybe, being part of the alumni, you could use their equipment. Or you could just, as I said, start designing and slowly get there. I mean, sometimes not having the machinery is not a bad thing, because that could actually change your process, and it could help you to develop and get to the next level without relying on that specific machinery. So I think it's all about your mentality and how you see things.
Yeah, I do agree. It's a very important thing when it comes to starting your own business, because it is definitely not an easy role. Like, if you want to get rich, there's definitely an easier way than starting your own business. What about Reiko, from your experience of building up a more than 10 years business? How does it feel?
I had a part-time job forever. I worked in a local shop for I don't know how long, like maybe 2 years. And so it was that case of, you know, working on your stuff before you go to work and coming back and working on it and just 24/7. But I think you got the energy when you're young to do that. And I did that until I got, I think I had something on like a national newspaper over the weekend, and then the online sales just went, you know, so that all that time I'd be building up the website and the product and getting everything ready. And once that thing started selling, I was like, that's it. I'm quitting this job and then moving on. But I mean, obviously everyone has different kind of experiences and situations, right? So you just do what you can within your means, and if you really want it, you will make it work. But you have to, I think, like you say, it's not, you're not going to get rich from doing it, probably. So you have to love what you know,
Yeah,
do in a way.
it's the passion that could drive you forward, really.
Yeah.
I'd really like to echo Darren's point actually about those sort of building those relationships as well, because I think it's like, particularly I've always found London to be quite there's a lot of stuff there that you can access, but sometimes you've got to have a big wallet to access it. However, I've got a mate in Manchester, and she has just found that just through going to places and creating relationships and talking to people and showing them her work, she's managed to sort of just wangle a lot of really, really good deals just from showing up. So, you know, she wanted to use she wanted a load of sort of raw materials that they had. I think it was just a big pile of sort of wood pallets and stuff. And she was like, do you know what, I'd really like to use this, but okay, in return, I can run some workshops for you for free. How does that sound? And then she managed to, so I think, you know, regardless of where you are in the country, building those relationships and being able to, because I can completely relate to your question, Joyce. It is absolutely the thought of having to have this huge sort of Scrooge McDuck style pile of money to start a business is so disheartening. And I would say that the majority of makers who have businesses start out on their kitchen table, getting stuff where they can, making stuff until it starts selling. Tanvi, did you want to add anything to that?
I'm just looking, I was going to respond to some of the chat questions, but I work with reclaimed materials, so that's one way. There's some limitations about what you can find, but reworking clothing and textiles and papers, found materials, that's sort of my economic limitations made me also work more creatively with materials that I didn't need to pay for. I mean, I know that's not going to be applicable to all disciplines and ways of working, but also you can ask your peer group or a local studio. If, for instance, I worked with ceramics as well, so I had a friend of mine who was had a residency in a ceramics studio, so I went and fired some pieces on her shelf. So, you know, you can sort of pull your resources together, keep contact with all your friends, and and make new contacts within locally too, so you can, you know, just travel to them if needs be.
I was going to say, I guess if you wait for you to get income, it may never happen.
Yeah,
because you might have a set income, how much you need to start a business, and that takes a long time. So by the time you have that money, you might not have that passion anymore, or you might be tired. So I guess it's just about doing it rather than waiting for you to get the income.
Yeah, I've always been quite an impatient person. I think it's kind of helped in that way. But no, I also really agree with Tanvi about kind of working within your means and making it work. Those restrictions can be you can find creative solutions within those restrictions. And, you know, even during lockdown, I think that creates more interesting work, because you're not in that pool of general kind of, you know, that pool. You're in this special kind of restricted zone, and it can be quite, I think.
I do think that during lockdown, but we do have a lot more time just like staying at home and doing researches. And I actually found a lot of places in London that I never know before that actually have the machinery that I need to use that's just down the road and stuff. But I think literally, like, sometimes when we're just doing our own thing, we oversee a lot of the stuff, like tiny things around us, and making good use of those connections are very important.
And local connections as well, I do agree. I think being local is pretty important, especially now with the whole environmental situation.
Yeah, for sure. And also because during the lockdown, I've been working on my business plan a lot, and I think having a business plan was like a right thing to do to help me set my mind up of like what kind of to-do lists that I need to list for me, like for my own business, and what kind of goal is my business. So I think Princess Trust, they do a very good entrepreneur startup courses, and I think it's for free, and they've got a lot of package for business plan online. So that actually helped me out a lot when I was figuring out how to set up my business. So yeah, that could be a tips. Moving on, that's actually quite an interesting question. Somebody would like to know if our maker would recommend protecting the intellectual property of your work while promoting online or via social media. I don't actually know much about intellectual property, but I've heard that any images or any visual content that you post online then actually belongs to Instagram or Facebook. So yeah, does any of our makers know?
I'm going to pop a link in for Brifa, who give they're our sort of advisors, and I went and had a chat with them, like a free consultation. Was the first one was free, so I got as much info as I could. But definitely the sort of the result of social media, what would you say, profiles or popularity, it does not negate the importance of your own website, and it does not negate the importance of your own mailing list. So those things that I graduated with, they're so important, because that's literally, you know, an app can go down overnight. There could be an issue, there could be some sort of, you know, so you really need to keep as much interest and content on your own sites that you own, and your own mailing list. Because if the apps have gone overnight for some reason, because anything can happen now, you've lost all your connections, your followers. So it's still really crucial to build your own mailing list.
Oh, can I do a quick plug, actually, very quickly? We are, sorry, Reiko, we are offering students my colleague Zoe is probably going to message me being like, actually find out how long the thing is. So a period for free on our directory. I will find out when it is while people are speaking and then come back to you. So on our directory online, which part of that,
it's 8 months.
8 months. I was like, how long is it? It's 8 months for free.
I am here. I've just got my video off.
It's 8 months for free on our directory if you're graduating this year, because obviously lots of people have not had degree shows, and it is obviously really impacting those connections. But as part of that directory offer, I think that you get a free half-an-hour consultation with ACID, which is a intellectual property organisation. So that is well worth looking into, and I will post the details of that at the end of the session. Sorry, Rick, I'll let you carry on.
I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, the intellectual property part is quite interesting, isn't it? Because I've had one case where I fought for intellectual property of copyist, and I'm a member of ACID as well, anti-copying in design, and that's been quite helpful. So I found a lawyer through that. I mean, I think ordinarily, personally, I just think a lot of like the copying, you could just kind of almost let go, because ideas in a way isn't an island in itself. You have to keep building on and pushing forward with your own ideas and building your business. But I did see, I've got an example actually here. This is a copyist design that someone had, I think it was selling in Joy, the shop, and this is kind of my original piece. I sent a piece, I must have sent it, you know, someone had ordered it off the website, and it's got these kind of wooden wheels on it, a ceramic bit with a magnet that kind of joins on, and this is their kind of version of it. I did see that in Joy, and I think, you know, when it's a copyist and an individual maker, it's a slightly different matter. I think there's quite a lot of naming and shaming that goes on Instagram, but in this case, I just thought it's a big company. A factory in China is just rolling them out and selling them at a trade show in China to shops like Joy. So I did pursue it just because it's had quite a lot of press anyway. So there was evidence of the kind of the design work, and it was kind of a blatant copy of it. So, but we did fight it. But in the end, the money I got back was less than the money that I'd paid the lawyers. So I think in a way, it's definitely beneficial for the lawyers, but with the amount of time and money involved, you just have to think quite carefully how you would kind of go across that. It's probably not worth it for most cases. I don't know. I had a chat with Donna Wilson as well earlier, she does textiles, and she's had quite a lot of copyists in a way, but she's not pushed any of those cases forward. So I don't know, I think it's just putting your energies into the negative sphere of it quite a lot, isn't it? And I just think there's better things that you could probably be looking at and pushing forward. But I just wanted to give you like my one example of that kind of the situation there. And it was fairly straightforward. The lawyers were fine, and it was a straightforward process because I had that evidence. But otherwise, I don't know. I would think carefully about going down that route.
Yeah, I think it is definitely a tricky one, because the time and effort and the money that you have to spend in actually legally suing someone, and the whole hustle, like mentally as well, you really have to balance it out and see if it's worth it. But also at the same time, I feel like if you actually master your craft to level, there's, when someone else copy you, it would be quite obvious that everyone will see that it's a copy, and you move on to something else, like you move on to the new thing and master the new thing.
And I think your followers would know where it came. It was like, in a way, like that relationship you have with your customers is more important anyway, and they're going to be on your side always. So
yeah, so I guess it's kind of like there's really not much you can do in terms of your intellectual property being violated online. I guess I will also try to approach that person personally and just express, how I feel about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I think the financial, sorry, Reiko, go on.
I wouldn't stop posting things or kind of introducing your work just because you're worried about intellectual property.
Yeah, definitely. And our strength will be to always come up with different ideas, new ideas. That's our strength, our creativity and our nimbleness. Whereas the corporates are obviously, they have to, the scale that they work on and the finances they're dealing with is vast. So there's no way we can compete financially on a legal case. But so I agree with Reiko. It's just sort of, you have to sort of let it go and not let it dishearten you, but also at the same time speak up for yourselves and for the rest of us, for the creative community in itself. So we can do that. We've got more of a voice on social media when we've got a collective voice. So can we talk a little bit? I just wanted to point out, sorry, Eve, there was something about, and I thought it was really good for Reiko, negotiating wholesale orders for when you're working with retailers.
I mean, it depends on the kind of I think it does depend on which sector that you're kind of working with, but ordinarily I work to sell to shops. You have your recommended retail price, right? And depending on whether you're VAT registered, that kind of the selling price will be different. But I work to probably 50% discount from list price, which is the price without VAT. So if something is selling for £12 in the shop, £10 without VAT, so the shop would get it for £5. So that's the kind of the markup that I work to. That's for shops. That's different for different arrangements. If it's sale or return, obviously the percentage is a lot less. The discount is a lot less. I ordinarily work to probably like sale or return 35%. I would say between 30 and 45% discount. But It's really dependent on the galleries. I'm sure Darren has got some kind of information from his side of how you deal with the wholesale. But it used to be, back in my day, you go to a trade show, you sell your pieces, you have your trade prices and a minimum order quantity and pack sizes, and you kind of deal with that. But I think more and more now it kind of depends on the quantity that they're buying up as well. But yeah, it's different now, I think. I don't know.
I would say the same. It just depends on organisation as well, and I guess how much percentage they take as well, because that has an effect as well, how much you price your items as well. So I think, yeah, it just depends. I would just say, before getting into anything, just do your research and make sure you compare as well.
Do you find generally it's about 50% discount with galleries?
Sometimes I get 40, it just depends, 40% sometimes, just depends.
I'm just copying in a link to the Crafts Council's craft business resources as well. There's just because you were talking about pricing your work, there is some really helpful detailed breakdowns on there, just because I can imagine that a lot of you were sort of scribbling away trying to get all of those details down. So there's a lot of it sort of written down on our website as well, if you want to check back.
Yeah, I would like to also ask Reiko about dealing with wholesalers, because obviously there's like different ways of wholesaling to them. I think either they buy a bulk, like a set quantity from you, and there's some is kind of under consignment. What's your kind of approach to the two different wholesale means?
What's counter consignment? Sorry.
Like I think consignment is like you kind of sell your pieces with them, and you only get paid when they actually sell your pieces.
Oh, like sale or return.
Sale or return.
Yeah.
There are certain shops that I work with, like Yorkshire Sculpture Park, which is sale or return. But I'm just, very happy to work with an organisation like that kind of, really kind of, I admire their organisation. So I want to be a part of that, or the Hole and Corner shop. There are businesses that I want to be working with, just because I admire their purpose and the vision of their business, and I want to be a part of that. So I don't often do sale or return, but like for those organisations, I'm very happy to be working with them. So I do work on those terms, but it's, at the end of the day, it's, if you've got stock sitting around in your studio, it might as well be sitting in a gallery or a shop, I think. I do think, for me, like the pieces that have got a larger value pieces are more worth it in sale or return environment, because some of the shops aren't perhaps prepared to take the risk of kind of high priced items that's kind of taking up space on their shop shelves. But if it's on a sale or return basis, then they might be more inclined to work with you to get some of the larger items out there, which I'm quite keen to. But also, like in other ways of kind of wholesaling, it's not just the shops in a way, like we always think of the shops, because that's what, as a general public, that's what we see, and we're familiar with that side of things. But there is also the interior design sector. As a trade show is quite important for interior designers who's got quite high net worth value, like individuals and organizations that kind of buy up craft that's specifically made by, like, gorgeously made in a way. And that market is, I think it is still going strong, even in this climate, even when shops might be struggling if they're bricks and mortar. And I know the online shops are doing quite well for some. But interior design trade is interesting, for ceramics, hospitality. Well, that's not very good at the moment. That's kind of, they're kind of, that's not let's not talk about that side of things today. But yeah, I do think interior design sector is quite an interesting area for craftspeople to get into, because there are people who appreciate really beautifully made items that could be placed in the design of things, and there's a budget usually that could be spent on that side of things.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question. Is that?
No, I think it does. But because for me as a jeweler, some of my friends did recommend me making more like object or furniture type of thing, and try to appeal to the interior sector. But I found it quite hard, because obviously I don't have any knowledge of how to get into trade show, or I don't really know anyone who's doing or making furniture. So I can't see like a stepping stone for me to then start exploring another.
Yeah,
process.
and I think that's why we don't really go into those spheres, because we don't see it, because we're not in these high net worth individual kind of interior design things. But Design Miami, Art Basel, Decorex, and what's the other one?
Design Junction?
Design Junction, or more Pad maybe in London, Pad London. I think they're that's kind of verging on the kind of the art design side of things, but they're quite interesting areas to look at, and through there I'm sure you'll be able to find the exhibitors, and you can follow the exhibitors, and it's a different world.
Yeah.
And you know, the aesthetics might not be like quite aligned at the first, but there are certain galleries and shots that do represent people who like from our more contemporary sort of settings, and it's quite interesting, because you can spend, because the end price can be so much higher, you can have really intricate, you can really spend time on pieces and have that difference, I think, and have that time to spend on one piece that you've always wanted to, you know, like,
Yeah.
As craftspeople, we just want to do better and make better and learn better, and I think in that sphere does kind of allow for that space a bit more.
Yeah.
Tanvi, did you want could you say a little bit about Collect Open?
Oh yeah, there was an advice session recently, but there's every big organization that opens up applications for something, they always provide really highly detailed guidance notes, and I'm sure Darren will remember for Hot House as well, when you were applying, they're quite extensive and very detailed, and if you really just need to sit down, and if it's easy for you to print them off, just print off the text, if that helps you, and write notes, and take some time to really slowly read through, because most of your questions are probably going to be answered in the FAQs, and then unless there's something really urgent, then you can contact the organization straight away. But I would say the best advice is what I wrote so many applications when I started, but I moved back home in order to do the admin to apply for so many public funded sort of grants and projects. So with Collect Open, you do have to fund it yourself. So even if you're applying for the project itself, so Collect, sorry, if you don't know, is a fine art craft fair in London. It's annual, usually around spring, early spring, late winter time. It was February this year. And it started in Vienna at the V&A, and then it moved to
Somerset House.
where was it before? Saatchi Gallery, and then Somerset House this year. So it's basically very different from working with. You have to be represented normally by an international based gallery. So basically, galleries from all around the world apply for the big spaces there. Collect Open is our way of platforming individual makers based in the UK, so that they could also be on that international stage in their home country. So you immediately, you're going to be seen by the visiting galleries who are exhibiting, plus the clients and collectors. So if you're working say if you started working in craft fairs or online craft fairs now, there might be a progression where you might be too early to start. So what you really need to be thinking of, even if an opportunity like Collect Open is a little bit further in your timeline, if it's 3 years ahead, you've got steps then that you can say, oh, I really want to get into this gallery, have that in your timeline. Next year I want to be here, and then the second year you want to be there, and then you basically have got the sort of, I don't want to use the word ammunition, but you've basically got the fuel to support you, tell yourself, you know what I mean? You've been able to prove to yourself, and you've made the right steps, that you're going to be then, sort of slightly more developed to be in such a sort of, what would you call it? High-end market, I suppose. And also the price points are quite high. So it's quite a commitment financially and time-wise to do Collect Open, but it's definitely worth researching and visiting the shows themselves, talk to the makers, look at how they're presenting themselves, look at the, how they've displayed their work, what are their price points, find out about them online, literally not stalk them, but, just research your market. And if you think, oh, do you know what, the work looks completely different, I might not even like it, but their ethos, their values, the way they work, or how they talk, when Darren was explaining how he talks with the imperfections of wood, I can relate to that, but I work in textile. So there's some sort of ways of you finding out if someone's work, if a gallery is interested in Darren's work, maybe they'll be interested in my work, and even if it's not the same discipline, these things can help. They give you clues, because you create your career yourself. It's not as if you apply for something and become a crafts practitioner. Reiko's path is completely different from Darren's, completely different from mine, and so will Eve's be. So you do create your own way ahead. But
can I jump in there, because we've got we've got a question that Alice wrote a while back, and I think it's one that Darren can definitely answer. Any tips for applying to cockpit studios? And I'm going to add a little caveat to that, and any kind of professional development scheme that is offered, because I can imagine that probably listening to some of this, it all sounds a bit, working with interior designers, these really, really high-end fairs. I imagine a lot of you are probably thinking, oh my word, how on earth am I going to get from where I'm here to doing something like that? And I don't want anyone to feel like super, super daunted by it. And there are a lot of professional development opportunities out there, such as Hot House and such as Cockpit Open Studios, that can really support you on your way to those things. So I wonder if Darren would be able to speak to that a little bit.
I would say the main thing is to be yourself, be authentic. Never try to be another designer or another craftsperson. I think it's understanding yourself. So you'll get a lot of no's, but it's about being resilient. So with a lot of people that are in cockpit arts at the moment, the first attempt, they didn't get into cockpit arts, but they continue to build that rapport. And so it's definitely a waiting game at times. You have to be patient. The same with galleries or doing Collect. You might not be ready for it now, but it's knowing that you have to work towards it. And it's a gradual process, rather than trying to, I guess, sell your work in the best gallery that's out there, or the most, I don't know what the right word is, but it's about being patient and trusting the process. And just keep on applying, because you never know who might pick up your work. So I think it's just being, patience is key at the end of the day. And also just get used to doing a lot of application forms and get used to altering it as well. And what I would say, it's so important to have an accountability partner. So this could be a family member who could help you with application forms. This could be a friend that can help you with budgeting and how to finance. This could be a friend that could help you build up your website. So I think at the end of the day, in order to kind of get up there, just remember you're not on your own, and you've got a community of people to help you to build yourself. And these organizations are corporate arts. You've got the Craft Council, who offer a lot of things. So I guess at the same time, it's about being an opportunist and seeking opportunities rather than waiting for the opportunities to come to you.
There's also a new question from France just now. It's directing to Darren. And he's asking about how did you finance your way throughout when you're having a studio at Cockpit Art and like obviously living in London as well and producing new collection.
Yeah.
How does the money come in?
How did the money come through? So I remember when I was in uni in my third year, and I was speaking to my tutor, and he said, you know, when you graduate, you're probably going to have to work in a bar to finance your way through. And once I graduated, that was a reality. I didn't want to take a bar job, but that's what happened. And so to fund my business, what I've been doing consistently, and I still do now, is I have other jobs. And so what I learned from my degree is that it's important to have transferable skills. So you need to very much be resourceful and take opportunities in order to get to where you are. It's a sacrifice, and you do develop new skills such as balancing and timekeeping skills, but it's key. It's key to success. And it's the reality of things as well. I think sometimes when you're in uni, you're in a bubble and you get a lot of opportunities thrown at you. And then once you graduate, that's when reality hits, and it's not easy. And the reality for me was that I had to get a job and to finance my way. And I had to have 1 or 2 days in my studio, and that's what I had to do.
I can really reflect that. I think from particularly living in London perspective, it is expensive. And I think sometimes, and I know that sometimes the Crafts Council is guilty of this actually, in terms of the makers that we are sort of representing, sometimes we don't show the whole story. And I think there is a real sense out there that there are makers with these beautiful garden studios and they just have this magical income that seems to just materialize from nowhere. And for 99% of makers, that is not the case. They are grafting pretty much all of the time and often having to say no to social commitments because they need to spend time working on their stuff. In terms of studio space, sometimes really, really good to Google subsidised or low-cost studio space for artists in your area, because that can be expensive too.
I live in Stoke-on-Trent.
South End. But yeah, I do think that a lot of the people who just graduated from uni like don't want to admit the fact that, you know, we do need to have a part-time job on the side to be able to sustain our living, like at least at the beginning of your practice. And it's actually a very common thing, but you know, it's that awkward thing of like, you know, running into someone in uni and be like, oh, what have you been up to since graduation? I don't want to be like, yeah, I've been working in the bar, but that's the reality. Like that's where money needs to come from, and you do really need to develop a very good time management skills and balancing all of your all aspect of your life, romance, you know, career, money wise. Yeah, but it's definitely about managing it. And you also learn throughout the experience, I think, because I've graduated for 2 years now, and I think definitely the first year is a lot about adjusting to say no to social commitment and putting all the resources or like extra money that you got from your job back into your practice.
I would also add, in order to kind of combat that busy schedule, what you need is goals. So for example, like in my first year was simply to just develop my skills further. And then like my second year was to gain exposure. So make sure you have a goal. Sometimes what happens is you're working, you're so busy, and if you have no goal, you have no direction. And that can be an issue as well, because you're balancing so much. It's so easy to lose yourself.
It's a really hard time actually, isn't it? Even when you've just graduated, I felt so lost and I think a little bit depressed. If I remember, you leave university and it is such a beginning of a journey actually. Like when you graduate, you think it's kind of the end of a journey, but it's actually just a real beginning. And yeah, I remember it was such a hard thing because I had in my mind what I wanted, but obviously no one could see it. And they just kept on saying, "Why don't you just get a job?" But it's making that jump. But if it's like everyone says, you know, you just do those lists, the business plan, and it is strange how sometimes it kind of works out somehow. And the things that you do want somehow materialize. I mean, you obviously work hard for it, but it does. I think it's about putting down onto paper, and also, like as Darren says, giving yourself the time to learn and kind of develop that side of things. But it is, I do appreciate it's quite a difficult time, and I can imagine it's even harder now with the whole COVID situation.
Yeah.
Well, speaking to that, there's been a really lovely question which was asked about half an hour ago, so I just want to bring it up. There's Carson wants to start an arts and crafts collective in Kent with an online shop selling their products. So, and I imagine that probably at this time when we are sort of doing a lot more stuff online and there's going to be a lot less opportunity for sort of group shows, did anyone have any pointers on working well collaboratively with other artists and makers? Yeah, that's my question. Sorry, I just added an at the end. Sorry.
I think because all artists or makers have like a very different schedule, so it is sometimes it's quite hard to like track them down and be like, we're doing this collaboration, or like we're doing this at a certain time. So I think the most important thing would be actually having like a set time for meetings. Like let's say each week or every month there will be a set time for you guys to meet up and talk about how you move it forward, because I feel like a lot of the collaboration always kind of end up in a flaky situation at the end, because no one is like fully committed into doing it.
And I would say also, especially in this period, we've got things like Zoom. So if you can't meet in person, you can always meet via Zoom. And so there's always avenues of kind of, if everyone can't meet up in one place, there's always ways of kind of communicating without having to see each other. So that's what I would say.
Add something. It's a nice story. Just before lockdown, literally the weekend before London had its lockdown, there's somebody, I don't know if I should mention their name, but there is someone in the chat, I mean in the webinar present, but I did their workshop, so it's Iran, and who's a textile dyer and costume maker, and I actually was able to physically go to this workshop. And then after lockdown I just really loved the experience and the sort of meaning behind her work. So I just emailed to say thank you. We connected online through Instagram, and then I just sort of emailed saying I'd love to do a collaboration. And the only challenge because of COVID, the pandemic, was because my postal service sort of stopped for 2 months. So the interaction that we were having through posting materials to each other sort of stopped and was delayed. But I've sort of, that was something that we've been developing. And we did, like Darren said, we set up weekly Zoom meetings when things were really sort of up in the air for both of us. Yeah. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah. Also, like as COVID lay out the past few months, I feel like a lot of us has moved like our attention towards online presence, especially like social media, and also selling online, taking commissions and stuff like that. Does our speakers have any kind of tips on social media strategy? Would you recommend hiring professionals to manage your social media?
I would say it's a journey. I started my social media from the beginning on my own, and you just see your work after a period of time just developing naturally, and that's an organic process which I love. I love scrolling down to the bottom of my page to see where I started and where I ended. So I feel like it's a journey, and if you did hire someone, you kind of miss that journey. And social media, how do I build it? I feel like it's just, again, using your network, using the people around you, because your friends know people that you don't know, and that person that you don't know knows someone that you don't know, and that person knows a gallery. And so there's always, everyone's connected one way or another. So I guess it's about utilizing your group of friends or your followers, and don't worry too much about the perfect picture, because that perfect picture doesn't come sometimes. And it's just, I guess, about building and developing slowly, I guess. It's a process.
Yeah, I think probably everyone else here is a bit more savvy with social media and internet side of things than I am. So I don't know how good I am with kind of that, giving tips on that. But I think, you know, social media and all of those things, they're just a communication tool, aren't they? And actually the most important thing is your kind of message and your purpose, right? And why you do it and what you do it for. And I think you just need that clarity so much. And at the beginning, you know, and also for businesses now, it's just about like keeping it simple and costs as low as possible. And I think doing social media, you can do that yourself, right? I mean, if you do need, like, when I started, I did actually have not right at the beginning, but once I could afford it, I did have a PR agency, and that kind of opened up quite a bit of doors, traditional media press, which I don't know how relevant it is now. It probably is still quite relevant, but at that time it just felt like the right time to do. But as Darren says, I think the more it comes from kind of yourself and it's about the message of what that purpose, then I think it's about that, isn't it, rather than trying to push things the whole time. But I mean, good photographs help as well, right? And I think who's it, Yeshin Venom does quite a lot of good tutorials on photography and things like that online that he gives, and does webinars on how to create your own images.
Yeah, and I think one tip of using social media, it could be observing your competitors, like the people you think who have a similar practice with you, who are doing quite well on social media. You could try to study what they post and how they lay out their whole page and kind of learn from that, I think.
This, just sort of following on from that as well, I wanted to highlight there's a couple of really awesome things that have happened on social media that kind of bridge that lovely gap between being in a gallery and having that experience, or being in a market and having that experience, and where we are right now, when we were in lockdown. So I saw on Instagram several really gorgeous online exhibitions. There's an artist who, she's honestly my favourite artist. Her paintings are so beautiful. Michaela Yearwood-Dean. She regularly exhibits on these sort of Instagram exhibitions. So if you follow her, she generally links to a lot of these exhibitions that she's on. Also, Independent Ceramics Market and DIY Art Market were doing a lot of online Instagram sales as well, and there's several of that. I know that Leicester in particular has a really, really good kind of market sort of community of independent markets, if you're sort of Midlands based. But the beauty of those is that you can be anywhere to sell them. So both of I mean, obviously DIY Market and Independent Ceramics Market are the same people, but it would be really good to follow those, because that is a really good opportunity to sell through those and build your following too.
I would say hashtags are quite important as well when posting on Instagram. Just have to be specific, I guess. Yeah, just say certain words, like if it's like interior designers, if you want to target interior designers, maybe put in as a hashtag interior designers. And I guess, yeah, being very specific with what you use as a hashtag. And what I also would say is timing is important. So what time do you post? So I try to post at 12:30, because that's when everyone's on their break and they're on their phones, or after 6, because everyone's out, finished work, and they're on their phones. So I guess being aware of the timings and what works for you is important.
Yeah, I think there's like this function on Instagram. If you register as like a business, then you can see insight of your of your Instagram activity, and they tell you what kind of like audience, how old are they? Are they female, male, where they're based, and what time in the day they're most active. I think those are quite useful. and it's just very easy to just turn your Instagram into business profile and getting all those resources.
Oh, and commenting is quite important as well.
Yeah,
Commenting, commenting is so important as well, because you never know, someone might click on your comment and they click on your page and they start following you. So it's just simple things like that as well.
Yeah, I also started doing this thing where I just start sharing other people's work more, and by doing that, you start having more interaction with other artists, and you start forming your own community on social media. Yeah. Following up the question that Carson just asked about setting up an online kind of collective market. And he would like to ask, do you guys think that it's important to have a cohesive style and price point for like different artists that they sell?
I don't think so personally. I feel like if you all have different markets, that's a good thing, because then you can bring all of those markets together, and that's opportunities for everyone in your group. And so it's good that you all come from, I guess, you have different price points. Sorry, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think if you're in that situation, it's about utilizing it and seeing how you can kind of communicate that as a collective.
Yeah, and also because I think he also mentioned that the collective is based in Kent and it will be selling like local craftsmen's work from there. So maybe it'd be good to have like a focus point of like the area and spreading the art of this area out. I think in that sense, then the aesthetic and price does not necessarily have to be the same.
And again, it just depends on your audience as well. I think that's the main thing, knowing your audience. And once you know your audience, then you will know how to price.
Yeah, true.
That's important.
To know who you're selling to. Do you guys have any questions, Deals, that could pop into the chat? And
have we? There was one. I mean, me and Tanvi have sort of semi-answered it, but it might be worth sort of. So Alice had said, any tips for designers that aren't particularly commercial and produce more installation art and experience art? Any good galleries to contact that support these kind of artists, or useful contacts, etc. Tanvi had suggested Camden Arts Centre, but look at public art galleries in your own area. And I had suggested, so local smaller museums all regularly have exhibition space that you can apply to use. There's often really lovely exhibitions by local artists and stuff, which is really nice. Google pop-up spaces in your area. And finally, very important, look at your local council's website for low-cost space for hire. It might not sound particularly flashy, but if you haven't got a lot of money and you want to hire somewhere, they often have really, really, really cool spaces that you can hire for free, or low cost to local artists. So well worth having a look at. I don't know if anyone else wanted to add to that. No. That's for the question.
Yeah, with local spaces, I think founding your local community center would be quite a good option as well, because they do have venues to offer, and sometimes you could exchange in like doing classes with them, and by doing classes you kind of improve your skill in a way. So I think that could be quite a good exchange. Oh, Leslie has another question for Reiko. So you've gone back to London after being based in Stoke-on-Trent. Did you find it necessary to be based in London for ceramics?
Ceramics. I moved up to Stoke-on-Trent to kind of really understand that material and the industry here. So it's been kind of a pretty fascinating experience, and I do really genuinely love the area. And I also teach at Staffordshire University as well, so I'm always up here. But it's necessary to be in London. I lived in London for like just over 10 years before I moved up to Stoke-on-Trent. So there is I mean, undeniably there is a creative energy in London that I'm addicted to. But I mean, it's more personal reasons that I've moved back down to London with my partner who has a job down there. So that's primarily the reason why I am in London. But if my personal situation was slightly different, I would probably be still living up in Stoke-on-Trent. I do genuinely love the area as well. But I wanted to leave London because just the calendar, you know, I think Eve mentioned the kind of the social calendar can get quite oppressive sometimes, and I just needed to get away and kind of just to give myself the time to learn really the craft a little bit more, because I didn't actually traditionally learn ceramics, so I've never actually been to university to do ceramics as such. But where was I going? I don't think it's necessarily you have to be in London. Absolutely, I think you can do anything anywhere, especially now everything is so online. Especially for ceramics, I really recommend Ceramics Material Workshop. Their online courses are excellent, and it really kind of gives you the detail of the chemistry, and that kind of gives you that control in your craft. So I don't think you have to be in London, but personally, I love having both spheres, because you have kind of, you know, very London-centric thinking and very Stoke-on-Trent thinking, which can be quite opposing sometimes. And I enjoy seeing that nuance of life and personalities.
What's the biggest advantage you think, like moving to Stoke-on-Trent?
Oh, the space is so cheap. So if you want a large space for studio space, it's great. But for ceramicists, you know, you can get secondhand equipment, kilns, furniture, people who fixes kilns for, you know, everything. All that support network for ceramics is just really like easily accessible here, and that it's all here basically. A shrinking industry, and you can take all their all their equipment basically. Sadly, it's shrinking, but you know, it's so for ceramicists, it's a fantastic place to be, and Staffordshire University is good. But I think, did you say that you're in the Highlands of Scotland? I would live in the Highlands of Scotland. I would stay there. It's where I want to live in the future.
Yeah, I do want to go Highland for camping, because apparently they do have a very nice scene.
Yeah, Scotland, I'm really looking into that.
Tansy, do you want to talk about your experience of sort of creative networks in the Midlands?
So the first place, which was really dry information, but it was a Nottingham business venture. But I understood how little I knew about finances. So that really helped in that way, because it's something that as makers you don't naturally want to look at. And then I immediately actually contacted the Arts Council, because that was the time, it was 2005, so it was the time when the offices were sort of regionally based. And I spoke to somebody in Nottingham face to face, but I would email first, very gently approach anyone, sign up to their sort of mailing list to find out if they have drop-in sessions. Like with the Crafts Council, you know, when we had the Collect Open guidance, we ran a seminar for how to apply. So, you know, it's really good to sort of know what you can off your own back, so to be really proactive. And there was the local public gallery that I connected with, because, like, I think Reiko also said there was was there a newspaper article that helped your online sales?
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, so sometimes you can, you know, take advantage of the place that you're actually in physically and not feel like you're missing out not being in London or being in Manchester, you know, the big cities. And the local galleries, there was a craft fair called Lustre in Nottingham. It was actually at the University of Nottingham campus, but I went to Nottingham Trent, and we didn't have a fair there, but we had one at the university that didn't actually run any practical art courses, but within their gallery, they ran a fair which a lot of our makers sell through. I see a lot of hothouse makers there, and I connected locally design Manufacture was another one. If you're in Birmingham, in the West Midlands, craft space, and especially if you're interested in the sort of social engagement and working with the public, learning, gallery education, I definitely connect with public galleries because they really, you know, they're part of their vision is to engage their local community. So if and I know there was an answer that was it Lex or was it Alice? I think that question. Yeah. So yeah, so that's sort of targeted towards your questions there. I would definitely just even go a little bit outside. I mean, in my later years, I started to think about non-conventional spaces. So like a family festival that might be happening with an arts organisation. In North Finchley, there's a place called Arts Depot. And they run like theatre program, and they had this family festival on in a park, and I ran one of my workshops there. I just, because I had a budget, I just paid for two of my friends to assist me, because it was going to be, you know, safeguarding issues, looking after children, and because it's a public drop-in workshop, you need to make sure you've got help. So, you know, just learn about your finances so you can budget in help, and then you can sort of and also the Arts Council and Artist Newsletter and Arts Quest. I might have to write these.
Arts Quest is a good one.
They give you a breakdown of what sort of fees you should be paying if you do need to do a big project and pay assistants to help you.
I wonder whether, so I'm just trying to think in terms of time, whether our final question, which was asked very early on, and I think probably is a very pressing question for a lot of people, is the big grants and applying to funding question. Does anyone want to speak to that, their experiences and top tips?
Yeah, I've applied for a lot of funding and grants, but unfortunately, I'm not the best at it, so I haven't get any.
Okay. Yeah, I think I might have put some links in, but I will. Can I just open it for Darren and Reiko, and then I'll try to put in a link to something that might help you guys.
I would say it's an art. You have to consistently do it to develop your skills. And I think the earlier you do it before the deadline, the better it is. So you have time to review it. And I think what I said before, it's important that you have someone that's accountable. So you have people that can read over what you've written. Because sometimes you get bogged down in the details and you miss punctuation or you have grammatical issues. So it's important that you have someone to look through the application form. And again, a mentor is important as well. So maybe having someone that can kind of guide you through the process. Sometimes it can be quite daunting doing it all on your own. So I think having someone to help you out is key.
Is there any like special pointers that you kind of use in all of your application? That's like, you know, the one that really works.
I think having a structure is key. Having a beginning, having a skeleton. So I think before I do any application form, I look at the questions and I usually put I jot down bullet points on how I will answer the question. So it's literally breaking it down so it's easier to kind of communicate what you're trying to say.
I accessed quite a lot of TAP grants for exhibiting abroad with the British Design Group, BDG, and I think there was one in New York that they were doing, New York Maison Appiagyei, but obviously I don't know if it's relevant for this time at the moment with trade shows. But Tammy, I'm kind of interested, can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
Just if you are interested in doing more community-based work, and I think it kind of feels like this whole pandemic is kind of bringing more of a local sort of focus and kind of creating and making for other people in a way, and to be useful for the arts to be useful in that sort of sense, isn't it? Like, what is the best kind of who is the best people to approach it? Is it the Arts Council?
Back then it was, and there's a lot of competition in London, obviously, and I've had a 4-year break, and I've only just recently relaunched my practice, but my making practice, but my workshop practice has always continued. So for me, it's like a coin. One side is making, and the other side is sharing those skills with others. So the first time that I actually did a workshop was at my local public gallery. It turned into a pound shop later on. It's not very nice, but that was before the financial crash sort of time, and it fell through. So we've been, a lot of us with our age have been through some, not as bad as this, but or it's challenging or different. In some ways, there's more opportunities right now, but all times, ups and downs, people will adapt, and I think we're sort of really able to do that because of our mindset naturally as creatives. But I gave a one-day artist-led workshop alongside a solo exhibition that I had, and it was in town in Leicester city centre, just on the high street, and they had a small crafts gallery, and then their fine art used to be at the back, and so I had a little bit of support because the gallery educator happened to be my tutor at my FE college. So these sort of connections, like Reiko and Darren have always been saying, the sort of support network and the mentors come in all sorts of forms, and it could be that just keep in touch with your tutors as well, because you never know, they might move into gallery education and then you can work in that way. But I would say there's call outs as well. So Milton Keynes had Milton Keynes Arts Centre, I think Zoe has had some work with them as well, or has some contact with them, but they have really interesting projects with artists and makers, because with clay, you can adapt your material, and maybe sometimes if the facilities aren't quite set up, like if they don't have a sink ready, you could work with air drying clay. There's some things that you sort of have to compromise on, depending on, because a lot of these places may not be well funded, or you might need to bring in a lot of materials. So there's lots of considerations. But I when I went to do my MA, I didn't necessarily have to do it, but I think I needed it to build up a bigger network for myself, and that's why I came to London. But my whole show ended up not being about product and not jewelry, and it became a workshop. So there's ways where you can run your craft practice as somebody who is engaged in making or conversation. So it doesn't, and the vehicle is the interaction with people around a table of craft materials. There's all sorts of ways, and that links in. I know there's some interest in installation and experiential art, so you can combine. It's not as if you can't connect your craft practice in that way.
One person who is amazing and well worth contacting or being aware of, if you are a socially engaged maker who's interested in socially engaged practice, is Lady Kit. They run a socially engaged craft and art kind of workshops and like surgery for makers, not only to look after themselves but also to enhance their practice. If you Google, I think it's Social Practice Summit. I'm going to write a big email with everything that's in the chat, by the way, so don't worry about writing too much down. And they bring together a network of socially engaged makers to support their practice and help with all of those kind of nuts and bolts of how you pay your way to do things, how you get funding, how you structure projects as well. It is a whole other sort of kettle of fish, really. And if people are interested in maybe a session on more socially engaged practice, I would be more than happy to put that together for you. I'm very aware that it's past, so I think I think we probably
I think we have to round it up quickly.
Yes.
Thank you everyone for joining our workshop today, and be tolerant with my unprofessional hosting.
No, it was amazing, Eve. Don't be silly. No, thank you so much. You did such a good job, and I just wanted to say thank you so much, Tanvi, Eve, Darren, and Reiko, for all of your input. A couple of things. I feel sorry for the people that left already because I've got exciting news. So I'm going to email about the directory offer. I'm going to email about something that is happening later on this year. I can't tell you what it is now, but it is a very good opportunity for new graduates, particularly responding to not having a graduate show. I will be emailing everybody that's attended or signed up to the list about that. It is very well worth applying to. But I'm going to send that email around on Monday, so make sure you look out for it. And what I'll do is in the chat, I'll have a little look through, and all of the things that we've signposted to, I'll put that in the email there as well. So don't worry about missing out. And finally, this is being recorded, and we'll share this on YouTube too. So you'll be able to go back and kind of look at any of the advice that you might have missed. But yeah, with that, I just wanted to say thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Eve, for hosting. You did an amazing job. And yeah, I'll see you all soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.